So in the last video we were talking about the first order conditions for quasi-convex functions. Uh, so the first order conditions, I did something wrong in the last video, so I clarify what I did wrong. uh, I was giving a geometric intuition of what was happening. uh, so I was drawing f of x, the level sets of level curves for f of x. So suppose if these are the level curves for f of x, um, this expression just means that if f of y is less than equal to f of x, so for example if this is a quasi convex function, f of y will be on a level curve which is inside, and f of x will be on a level curve which is outside. So this is y and this is x. The vector y minus x, this vector, and the gradient, that is f of x, the gradient of f of x will be in the opposite directions. That is what is meant by this equation. So the gradient is, at f of x is inverse, because the structure, if I draw it in the with respect to x, y and f of x, f of x, y, this is my structure, sorry, this is my structure, and you can see that at every point the gradient is towards uh, inverse of x. Sorry, this is x axis, this is y axis. These small x and small y are points. uh, this is my x axis, this is my y axis, and this representation is, it is the function is on the z axis, which is conveyed by the contours. Okay. Similar way we can say about the second order conditions. So for a function which is defined from R to R, the second order conditions are fairly simple. So if the function looks like this, we say that if the slope at a point is 0, then at that point at that point the second derivative should be, this is x, this is f of x, the second derivative should be positive if at x such that f of x is 0. For R to R, this is the condition, and this is fairly straightforward. But when it comes to more variables, multi-variable case, it is a little bit more complicated. Start by thinking about a condition which is analogous to the R to R case, and that is stating that at x, where f of the gradient is 0, at that point the Hessian is PSD. That is something we can state which is analogous to our R to R case, but this is not sufficient. Like in most of the cases, even if this condition holds, the quasi-convexity may not hold. So the complete definition of the second order conditions is given by this. So this means that this del fx is the gradient, and this y transpose, this is sort of giving an inner product. So the inner product between a vector and the gradient is 0, so it defines a plane, not a plane, it defines a subspace which is orthogonal to the normal, the gradient. So if we take any vector in that subspace, for those vectors the quadratic expansion is non-zero, it is non-negative. So this means that for except one, so except that one eigenvalue, all the eigenvalues have to be uh, non-negative. For that particular one eigenvalue, at most one eigenvalue can be a negative value, and that eigenvalue corresponds to the direction of the normal, because that uh, because we are looking at the plane which is orthogonal to that normal. So to concretely explain this, we can consider an example. So we have a function which is of two variables x and y, and this is the function. So it looks like an inverted Gaussian curve, and this is a quasi-convex function. So if you look at a point somewhere here, there is a normal pointing, and that normal is pointing towards inward. That normal is pointing inwards, and so if we look at so the normal has two components. The direction has two components. It has x component and it has y component. So all such normals will lie on a, so if I take this point, so all such normals are going to lie on this plane. I can have a plane here. So all such normals will lie on this plane, and what this is trying to say, this expression is trying to say, is that there is a plane which is perpendicular to this gradient. So there is another plane which is perpendicular to this this direction, and we just cutting this structure, cutting this structure, uh, and if we should be bulging outwards in all directions except one direction. For example, in this figure itself, this point we have taken, the point, if we are trying to draw a small sheet across, around this point, that it will have a saddle kind of structure which is bulging outwards in one direction and inwards in the other direction. So that uh, outward bulge has to be in all directions except one. uh, that inward bulge can have at least one, at most one direction. That is what is conveyed by the eigenvalues. Okay, so if W is of the second order conditions for quasi-convexity. So the statement is that if f is from R to R, and if then f is quasi-convex if and only if f star, if and only if wherever f star f dash x is 0, f double dash x is greater than or equal to 0. Proof: in the first direction, we assume that f is quasi-convex. Then what we do is we take a point C. So take a point C, write it down. C is between A and B, such that f dash C is equal to 0 and f double dash C is greater than or equal to 0. So this means that if double dash c is 0 greater than equal to 0, and if f dash c is 0, this information is um, enough to convey that at at a small point which is just before c, so this is c, so any small point just before c, at that point the function will be lesser than the value at c, and a small value after the function will be lesser than c. So f of c minus epsilon, so for epsilon greater than 0, this is less than c, and for c plus epsilon, this is also less than f of c. So but now this creates a problem, because uh, we are looking at a quasi-convex function. uh, so now it is very clear from the condition that uh, the level set, the alpha level set for this area and for this area, they are disjoint. So if they are disjoint, then f is not quasi-convex, which contradicts our assumption. So f double dash c has to be greater than equal to 0. So that proves it in the one direction. Now in the other direction, we assume that for f dash c equal to 0, f double dash c is greater than equal to 0, and f dash of c, f double dash of c is greater than 0, and f dash of c is equal to 0, then one immediate consequence will be that f of c minus epsilon is greater than f of c, and f of c plus epsilon is also greater than f of c. Now this epsilon can be any value, because c is a minima of this function. So epsilon can be any value on both sides. So if we fix epsilon as x and y, suppose, so if we have some x and if we have some y which satisfies this y, uh, sorry, if we have some y which satisfies the same expression, then we can say that f of c minus z will also satisfy the same expression, and z can be anything. So z can be some convex combination of x and y. So if so this is basically saying these three are essentially the same sets, so quasi convexity is proven. So now we look at a property. If f1, f2, fn are quasi convex functions, then their weighted non-negative weighted maximum, that is defined by max of w1 f1, w2 f2, w1 fn, where w1, w2, wn are all non-negative. This function f is quasi-convex. We prove this property. Proof is very simple. So we start from the fact that the alpha, rather f1 through fn are quasi-convex. So if this is the case, then we can say that for all f's, the set this set a set of all x such that x belongs to domain of fi is less than equal to uh, alpha, less than alpha. So this is the alpha sublevel set of fi. um, so now we if we are trying to weight, so if you are trying to weight this, so now we try to prove this property. So we start by the fact that um, all the f1 through fn are quasi-convex. So if they are quasi-convex, then for all i's, what is happening to the xi's, the set of x's such that x is in the domain of fi, x fi of x is less than alpha. Okay, so if this is the case, then if we just weight the fi and w, we can, since they are non-negative weights, this inequality is not going to change. So this set, this alpha sublevel set still holds for some weight wi. Now if this is the case, then so now they are all sets w1 f1 x less than w1 alpha, w2 f2 x less than w2 alpha, and all, and so on. So now we take the maximum wi alpha. So there will be some alpha and there will be some wi for which this product is highest. So all the other will be lower than that highest product. So we just replace this thing by the highest product w alpha, and now we take the intersection of all these sets, that is wi fix, the intersection over i's. So what we get when we take the intersection of i's is precisely what we want, that is maximum of w1 f1 x through wn fn x. The this maximum less than equal to less than w alpha. So this is what we wanted. So this is actually so it is an intersection of, so this is the so this set is a w alpha sublevel set of the max function. So it is a we just what we did is the intersection of all these sets, and all these sets were already, all these alpha sets were convex. So this is an intersection of all these convex sets, so it is a convex set. So since this is a convex set, this function max of whatever be it is quasi-convex. We see another property, which is the minimization property. So the statement is this: if f of xy is a quasi-convex function which is jointly quasi-convex in x and y, so it means that it is jointly quasi-convex, like it is not that Now we see another property called the minimization property. So the statement is this: if f of xy is jointly quasi-convex over x and y, in x and y, and C is a convex set, then the function gx, which is denoted by the infimum of the function xy over all y's in C, is quasi-convex. So let us try to prove this. So what we have to prove is the set given by the alpha sublevel set is convex for G. So it is sufficient to prove that G of lambda x1 plus 1 minus lambda y x2 is less than equal to alpha if G of x1 is less than equal to alpha and G of x2 is less than equal to alpha. So this is basically given to us, and this is what you have to show. So if this is the case, then this means that so now we are continuing from this statement. So we have infimum. So now we use the expression of G, that is infimum of y over C f of xy is less than equal to alpha x1, this x1 comma y less than equal to alpha 1. Now there is a problem. If the alpha is equal to, if the infimum is equal to alpha 1, and since this is a open set, this may cause some troubles. So we add an epsilon here to shield the infimum from the epsilon. Now if infimum of f x1 comma y is less than equal to alpha 1, it means that there exists some y in C for which the value x1 comma y is less than equal to alpha 1. But now there is a problem. This infimum, if this infimum became equal to alpha 1, such a value may not exist if the set is open. So what we do is we shield the infimum with equality by adding an epsilon to this expression here, and similarly there exists a y in C for f of x2 comma y being less than equal to alpha 1 plus epsilon. Now if f is quasi-convex, which is given to us, so if f is quasi-convex, this means that the alpha sublevel sets of fx comma y they are going to be convex, which means that f of lambda x plus 1 minus lambda x1 and y1 comma lambda x2 plus lambda x2 plus 1 minus lambda y2. Oh, sorry, this is x2, this is y1 and y2, and this is less than equal to alpha. So so like if x1 y1 and x2 y2 uh, satisfy this condition, then the combination also satisfies this condition. So there exists a y in C. So I'm just replacing this term with a y, and I'm stating that there exists a y in C such that this condition holds. And if this is the condition, then uh, this is precisely what I want. This can be exactly translated into infimum of y in C f of lambda x1 plus 1 minus lambda x2 comma y less than equal to alpha. See, this is because if there exists a y such that this happens, then it will happen for the it will also happen for the infimum value, the y which gives the infimum. So that's why this is the case, and this is exactly the definition of G. So this is that is what we wanted to show. Now let us see how we can represent quasi-convex functions with families of convex functions. So representation of quasi-convex functions using convex functions. Okay, so suppose if we have a quasi-convex function f of x, and then we have to, and then we want to represent it as with the help of convex functions. So it can be done this way. So suppose if phi t are a set of phi t is a family. Say phi t is a family of convex functions, then phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, all of them are convex functions. So let phi t be defined over R into R, just like f, and they are indexed by t, and this index t is necessary. It doesn't have to be natural numbers. It is basically a continuous index. That is how the indexing is done in this case. So this is how the representation is done. So we take the alpha sublevel set, or no, we take the t sublevel set. We take the t sublevel set of f, that is uh, f of x less than equal to t, all values of x such that f of x less than equal to t, and then we assign these x values. Then we say that this set is equal to the set which is the zero sublevel set of phi t. That is, this set is equal to the zero sublevel set of phi t. So this is the value, all x values such that this thing happens. So for example, if I have a quasi-convex function f of x, and I have certain points at which I can divide it in sublevels, suppose alpha, beta, gamma, then uh, the family that I would like to have to represent my quasi-convex function will be phi alpha x less than equal to 0. This is a this phi alpha x less than equal to 0 is a set of all this is the sublevel set, 0 sublevel set of phi alpha. So similarly I take other 0 sublevel sets, phi beta and phi gamma and so on. So this is the entire family of the convex functions I'm using to represent the quasi-convex function. And the so one thing which we may notice is that if beta is greater than alpha, so in that case uh, the sub, t sublevel set sorry the uh, okay I just write this here. This is representing the sublevel set fx less than equal to alpha. This is fx less than equal to beta less than equal to gamma. Okay, so if suppose beta is greater than alpha, then fx will be definitely less than alpha. So this means that t should uh, have the property that if like for all x, phi t of x should be less than phi s of x or s greater than equal to t. Metrical interpretation may be like this: if we have a quasi convex function and then we have two sublevel markings at suppose t and s, then this will be the uh, s sublevel this will be the s subset, and this will be the t sublevel set. This will be the t sublevel set. This will be the s sublevel set. So what I am doing now is so now I take a convex function. Now I take a convex function, or rather I should draw it upright. Now I take a convex function such that this is the 0. This part is the 0 sublevel set of this convex function, and for the next one it will be like this. Right, so this is what is being conveyed by this expression. So if we fix x and if we are increasing s, so this is what we did: we fixed x and then we are increasing s. So in this case t is greater than s, so we see that the convex function associated with the uh, t sublevel set is uh, lesser than always has lesser values as compared to the s1. Suppose if beta is greater than alpha, then f of x less than equal to alpha would imply that for those x, f of x will be less than equal to beta as well. So if so, this is the same set which is corresponding to phi 1x less than equal to 0, and so this will imply that phi 2x is less than equal to 0. So this creates a relation between the members of the family. That is, if phi sx is less than equal to phi t of x. Take an example. If suppose example if p is convex and if q is concave, and suppose if p of x is greater than equal to 0 and q of x is greater than 0, then the function defined by px by qx is quasi convex. So if this is the case, we can define the level sets for we can define the level sets t level set for fx by stating that fx is less than equal to t, the set of x for which fx is less than equal to t. But this will be the same as the values of x for which px by qx is less than equal to t, that is q of x minus p of x minus dq of x is less than equal to 0. So we converted this in a form where we have a px minus we have a convex function. So these are all convex functions because px is convex and qx is concave. So now we have convex functions and they all depend on t, and we can see that these they give the level sets of the x's which satisfy this are 0 level sets of these functions. Next we move on to log concave and log convex functions. So they are just functions whose log is concave or convex, but they originally need not to be convex or concave. So the definition is simple. Say function from R to R, R into R is said to be log concave if it is non-negative, it is positive for all x in the domain of f, and log f is concave. So if we just write down the definition for it and if we just move the log, what we get is this. So f of theta x plus the condition which the inequality for a log concave function will look like this. This is we just moved the log out of both the sides, so that is why it is the theta went in the exponent. Properties. So product of log concave functions is log concave. It is because it is easy to see because product of log concave functions is just, if you take the log, it becomes the sum of concave functions, and sum of concave functions is concave, so the product is log concave. This is not true on addition. The addition of log concave functions is not log concave in general. And one more property is the integration property. That is, if I have a function f it from R2 to R, that is f x y, and if I just integrate this over one of the variables. So if fxy is log concave, then gx is log concave. This is a property. Consequences of this integration property are that the marginal of if the joint distribution is log concave, then marginal over one of the variables will also be log concave. Just like that, marginal over one of the variables is log concave. Then we have the convolution is log concave because convolution is also an integral. So convolution is also log concave. Example called the there is one more example called the yield function. So it says that if there is a nominal parameter x and what happens is there is some perturbation in some random perturbation to this nominal value w, such that w is a random variable with a distribution which is log convex, then log concave, then the probability that uh, this value x plus w, it belongs to a the permissible values, this belongs to the set of permissible values s when s is convex, is also this probability value, this probability, it depends on x actually, because w is the perturbation, so it is a function of x. So this is also a log concave function. Way to see this is that the probability values that we are interested in calculating can be calculated by integrating over the distribution, and the the integration operation preserves uh, this integration operation preserves log convexity or log concavity. So therefore this, so if so we are integrating over the distribution of w, so if it is log concave, then this function is also log concave. W is characterized by its density, not distribution. Sorry, if I said distribution somewhere, I think W is characterized by its density. The density is log concave. Distribution is also log concave because distribution is integral of this thing, so it will also be log concave. But it is not true the other way around always. Like the uh, distribution can be log concave, but the density may not be. We will see convexity with respect to generalized inequalities. Uh, so up till now we have been looking at convexity, function convexities with respect to the numbers, and it is possible to generalize this notion to matrices and vectors by um, defining the ordering of how we define uh, how we define one matrix is in some sense less than the other matrix. Uh, so like uh, the case we did with cones when we are discussing sets. So their function is called k non-decreasing uh, k non-decreasing if a function from Rn to R is called k non-decreasing if uh, x and y are ordered in this fashion with respect to k, and f of x is less than or equal to f of y. So if this thing happens, then we say that k is non-decreasing. Basically this is some ordering, and what we are doing is we take uh, two components, and then we are calculating the functions. So if the functions follow the same order, then they are non-decreasing. The opposite is the opposite is increasing, and that happens when k increasing, and that happens when not exactly opposite. It is the increasing when f of I strictly greater than fx. And for example, if the ordering defined on um, suppose if I have a vector, I have a function going from vector space Rn to R, and the ordering defined is uh, x ordered with respect to y on k, uh, defined by this, that is if we say that x is ordered with respect to y if the corresponding elements are then we say that it is non-decreasing, the f is non-decreasing if this thing holds where x1 x2 up to xn are components of the vector, and the function fx is less than equal to function fy. Similarly, the matrix in the matrix world also we can have monotone functions of matrices, and that is when we have uh, for example, if we have a matrix is a symmetric matrix Sn, and so we are for in the matrix case, um, we say that something is matrix monotone uh, if you have two matrices x and y, and they are defined like x minus y, both x and y belonging to the family of symmetric matrices on n dimensions, then x minus y is uh, y minus x, suppose, is PSD. Then we can define such kind of a monotone ordering on matrices, like the function of x should be less than equal to function of y, like that. Can be extended to defining convexity with respect to generalized inequality. Like suppose if k is it's a k is a proper code, and there's an associated inequality with it, then we say that the function from Rn to R is k convex. This is the term we use, k convex, if f of the standard inequality, this function is uh, ordered in k against uh, this value, general vector space Rn, because if it is R, then it is just uh, the inequality is just less than or equal to. So if it is if the function maps from Rn to Rm, then the inequality has to be the generalized inequality of the code. So the function is similarly strictly convex if strictly convex, so strictly k convex if uh, this inequality is strict. Uh, the chapter has come to an end, so we'll stop here.